This is Get Your Goddess Groove On Radio. When the goddess speaks, everyone listens with me, Laura Hosford. Do you feel like life is a mystery to be solved? That you must stand alone in this life? Listen deeply, beloved soul, and hear my call. I am your waking inner goddess speaking to you. I am here to call you home and activate your deepest prayer inside of you. As an emissary for the goddess, I offer you authentic channel messages of love, inspiration, and heart-healing grace to guide you forward in transcending your consciousness and becoming the change you wish to see in the world. Now get ready and join me as we get your goddess groove on right now. All right, welcome, beautiful goddesses, beautiful souls. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Get Your Goddess Groove On show, here live or on the replay. We really do appreciate you coming and sharing your beautiful priestess light with us today and supporting this beautiful community as we come together to inspire each other, to lift each other up, because through community is a powerful vehicle of creating love, of creating peace, of creating safety, of a place that we can all come, a sanctuary for our soul, where you can receive beautiful, inspiring messages, be seen in your authentic light, and just be here fully. Okay, just being here fully, we invite you to just rest. And that's going to actually be our beautiful topic today with our beautiful returning goddess speaker. I'm so super excited to have Cindi come back to us. She was with us last year, and we did a beautiful show together last year talking about the topic of midlife, as Cindi being a midlife midwife. And we're going to be talking today about the power of rest, healing magic for midlife and menopause. So stay tuned, stay with us. Cindi will be taking your questions today. And she also has a little surprise for us today as well that I'm excited about for her to share with us. And let's just jump right in right now. So we're gonna be talking about bewildering changes you've experienced maybe in your midlife body um, with Cindi today. And her question is, could you be in perimenopause if you're 35 or older and wondering, is this it? Changes that you are going through or starting the journey through the change. Although half the population goes into menopause every year, there's still a million questions women have about this mysterious process. What can I expect? How long will it last? And who will I be when it's over? And there's just a myriad of physical changes that can leave you feeling like your body maybe has betrayed you a little. Maybe you're experiencing sleepless nights, the emotional upheaval that we go through, the bobble brain fog we might be experiencing on a daily basis. It can all be very overwhelming and even exhausting. So let's jump right in now to hear from our beautiful goddess Cindi. And Cindi, welcome back to the show. How have you been, dear?
Yeah, thank you for that lovely warm welcome. I'm so excited to be back to continue our conversation about the power of rest that has continued to be a very strong theme for me this year. And so I have a lot of exciting and fun things to share with your audience.
Beautiful, beautiful. Why don't we get started with, for those in the audience who don't know you and to help them to get to know you a little bit, do you want to share with us a little bit about your own personal journey of how, you began to get started into becoming a beautiful goddess wisdom keeper, I like to say an expert around the power of rest and around these themes that women go through in our midlife, going through perimenopause, going through menopause. How did that all get started for you?
Yeah, I like to say that rest saved my life. I go back all the way to the tender age of 28 when I had what we call now a quarter life crisis, when I was in go mode, just out of college, a few years working and caught up in that grind of pushing and pleasing and perfecting. And it took a real toll on my health through the worsening of my allergies and grinding of my teeth and headaches. So I had sleep issues like insomnia. And I also, it affected my menstrual cycle with terrible PMS. And I also developed seasonal affective disorder. And I would just be constantly going and not taking breaks, not resting. I was always had to do more and more. And that led to the end of a business trip where I traveled in a condition that I shouldn't have and through a snowstorm. And this is the short version of my story. And I passed out on a grocery store floor. And then I was put on a week's bed rest. And I fought it tooth and nail. So, not long after that, I was introduced to yoga and I began a yoga practice. So, that's over 25 years ago now. And through my journey of learning yoga, I came across restorative yoga and really fell in love with it. So, learning, we think of yoga as the poses and the stretching, and then there's also these elements of like mudra and breathing and relaxation at the end of like when you go to a traditional yoga class. And I thought that was really that was the hardest practice for me to learn. And once I began to accept that practice and receive it, everything changed. And I went deeper into restorative yoga. And that's primarily what I teach now and helping other women who are in midlife, who are struggling with that sense of overwhelm and exhaustion, to reclaim their physical and emotional health and to receive deep, delicious rest when they need it most.
When we
And
need it most, exactly. Yes, and
yeah,
we so need that today in our rapid pace modern society. And I think as women and men, we're so programmed on the 9 to 5 linear sort of way of being, even, not just during the work week, but even sometimes our weekends when we hopefully are taking time out to rest, to truly rest. And I really want to dive deeper into the topic of rest with you because I feel like that maybe sometimes we're just scratching the surface of what that really means and what that really is to give that to ourselves and if we're open to receive true rest. And tell me a little bit more about the type of yoga you do for people who don't know what type of that restorative yoga. How do you tell us a little bit about what is that type of yoga and how do you work with that with your groups and your clients, just so we have a little bit of a foundation, if you would?
yeah, that's a great question. So, restorative yoga is this practice of simultaneously stimulating and relaxing the body to bring it into a space of harmony. And you do that through different props. You might have bolsters, blankets, blocks, straps, pieces of furniture like a chair. And there are probably close to 50 restorative yoga poses that I know and can teach women. And primarily, I like to teach them one-on-one in a studio space is ideal. Since COVID, I have been online. My women's circle now is online. So I do teach them in that format. And I have these beautiful photos that my daughter demoed for my son, who's a amateur photographer, took the pictures of. And so I'm able to
Mhm.
demonstrate them online and point out different things about what you
Mhm.
should be feeling in your body, where there it's not about stretching. So we think of our active form
Mhm.
of yoga is about holding poses and actively stretching the body and strengthening the body. You can think of restorative yoga as more of a passive stretch, a releasing of tension and an
Mhm.
opening of the body. So it's very feminine, it's very receptive, and I love it.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that with us so that everyone understands about that yoga if they're not familiar with that. And I love what you said because being about the reception of receiving our divine feminine and anchoring more of that divine feminine to me is so crucial and important today. And there's many different modalities and ways that we can tap into that. And I love what you're saying because it's a passive, and the feminine is a passive energy. It's a very subtle energy. It's a very refined energy. But we've been so conditioned and trained in all the outer ways to distract us from going deeper into the body and feeling that deeper subtle connection. And I love what you're doing to provide this beautiful modality to really, it's like you're resting in the passive subtleness of the layers of receiving the feminine, which a lot of us do struggle with, to receive love, to receive, which the feminine is love. So that's so beautiful, Cindi. I love that so much. So let's jump into, what's the number one way that we can begin to really go to a deeper level of receiving deep, delicious rest and renewal? I love that delicious word. That's so juicy. And how do you help women, and how do you help us to do that? What are some things that we can do and begin to incorporate in our daily lives?
That's such a good question. So, restorative yoga, we touched on one, right? That is the physical way that we can rest. But we can also rest the other layers of our being. We can rest mentally, emotionally, spiritually, right? So while we're in that restorative pose, it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to feel. I heard you use that word, and I like to use this practice that I created called feel, rest, and digest. We feel into our body and connect with it, right? We rest and then we digest. So for me, a restful practice is to journal and express my thoughts and what's in my heart, and in a way that allows me to open my heart and to let me rest emotionally. We put so many judgments on what we're feeling and thinking all of the time. And a yoga practice teaches you to observe that as a neutral witness. And that's a very restful process. We also learn, and I think we talked about this the last time we met, we also learn in yoga to rest the mind. And it's not as though we're trying to shut off that stream of consciousness, because that's where our ideas can come from, creativity, right? We don't want it to go away altogether. We just want to quiet that a little bit and have some rest mentally. And we live in a world, as you pointed out, that is so full of noise and distraction and chaos. And just look at our email inboxes, right? So our mind needs a place to rest as well.
Yeah,
That,
absolutely. And that's a really important point because I do feel like, and even lived this myself, being a very highly, from my own ancestry, a very strong left brain emphasis. But I was very fortunate that I have also a very strong right brain connection, which is the connection to the creative part, to the part that is connected to source, creativity flow, as well as the heart. So you're so on point because we need to give ourselves periods of a mental rest and emotional rest, as well as physical rest. It's all super important. It's all connected. And I know that for myself, I was trying to meditate for about a year, and I was using a method, and these tapes, and they worked to some degree, but for me, I needed more. And I was very fortunate because my mind was constantly running with all these like tapes, right? And so I was able to overcome that, fortunately, most of it. And it took a determination, it took like a focus, it took a prayer, an affirmation, or a heart's desire to, that you're going to overcome this. You're going to bring in a way, from source to be able to really find a way to rest our mind. I think that is so super, super important on the mental because there is so much stimulation coming in from all the things. We all know what they are. Tell us a little bit about how perhaps you teach women and others, how do we rest our mental level, our emotional level, as well as our physical? Because are you doing that with this type of restorative yoga practices? Do you have other practices that you bring in, or help to maybe describe so that our listeners can get like a visceral little bit of an experience here? And I think you're going to share a process with us today also. Is that right or not? I'm not sure, but share with us what you can help us to understand.
Yeah, yeah. What I brought today for an experience is to draw an oracle card, right?
Okay.
So to kind of dipping into the spiritual side of things
Mhm.
and resting in that way opens us up to our connection with the divine. I think one of the things that happens with women as they're going through perimenopause is wherever they are on that spectrum of sensitivity, that gets heightened no matter where you are. And so the idea of rest to regulate and soften your nervous system to bring it into that parasympathetic state is also what opens up, in my opinion, your intuitive channels, your creative channels. I know I'm digressing a little bit here, so I'll go back to your question. In perimenopause and menopause, those creative juices that flowed to create life in our bodies, now they can flow somewhere else, right? They can flow into a passion project. They can flow into a new career or a new relationship or a deepening of your relationship you have with your family. There are so many different ways that creative juice can flow now. And by resting and learning these practices to rest, we open up those channels in new ways. I think to answer your question, I hope I'm going to answer this in the way that you want me to, is yeah, I bring in other practices. Sometimes while we're practicing restorative quiet, I lead women into relaxing themselves physically because the body, the mind, the breath, they're all mirrors of one another. So we can start with any one of them and hopefully the others follow, right? But it takes practice. So sometimes I might start with the breath, right? I like mudras, hand gestures. They are very subtle practices, easy practices that work on kind of the more subtle energy points in the body. We always think of the main seven energy centers, the chakras or chakras, depending on how you say it. But the hand gestures and mudras work on all of the other minor energy points in the body. So it's a very subtle, and it's also breathing, restorative yoga, mudras, journaling, creative activities like coloring mandalas. These are all really restful practices. They're easy, right? And I always say to my women, if your yoga feels like one more thing to do in your life, then take a look at what type of yoga you're practicing. And maybe there needs to be a shift for a while. And I say for a while because there's a season for everything. And I find that during these perimenopause years, I have practiced a lot of restorative yoga. And then earlier in my life, I practiced more active yoga. And I'm starting to incorporate more of that back into my practice as I regain my energy. And then also just seasonally, like wintertime, restorative yoga. Summertime, I'm really energized. And I might like to do yoga out on my paddleboard or out on my lawn or more active yoga.
Mhm.
So I hope that answered your question. And even let me expand also just on the active yoga, because I'm not dissing it all, but even within our active yoga practice, there are very gentle forms of yoga that are restful, that support a woman's body. And I'll take the moon salutation, for example, which I'm sure you're familiar with
Yes. Mhm.
because we share a mentor, Laura.
Mhm.
Now, who teaches the moon salutation, that is a very restful, active practice that was created by women at Kripalu Center for women while they were menstruating to complement the energies of the sun salutation. And it turns out that's also a great salutation during other times of a woman's life when she needs more rest, like when she's pregnant, when she's going through perimenopause, or just if she's going through some kind of a health shift where she needs a more restful practice.
Beautiful. So I love that where you're talking about the different seasons and sometimes switching it up on the form of yoga that serves us best because our bodies being elementals, right? Gifts of a part of the elemental kingdom of Mother Earth. And so our bodies have very specific needs, right? We all know we need clean air, we need clean water, we need clean food, but we need rest for these bodies. And these bodies are working very hard right now, I think, on double time um, with this ongoing ascension process that many talk about and refer to, and raising our vibration and going through this enormous growth period. So I love what you said. So we're now in the springtime. How can we plant maybe new seeds in the spring? Because the spring is for planting, right? We came out of the winter. Winter, we go into kind of a hibernation sometimes. We slow down. And with the seasons, our bodies are going with the cycles. Our bodies are not linear. The true feminine energies are about cycles and about spirals of time. That's the way the true reality works, that I believe. But now that we're into these beautiful energies of spring and after post eclipse, all these beautiful new energies, new light waves coming in. Maybe there's a thought or two or some wisdom here you can share with us. How can we plant spring in the spring? How can we plant maybe new habits or give us tips or of how we can bring in more rest and therefore create more balance for our body? Getting back into a restful state, I think, is important and connected to balance and connected to also very important our nervous system that you mentioned. And what have you discovered about that for yourself and in working with other women? Do you have any thoughts on that for us?
Okay, wow. So I think there,
Whatever part of that you want to, don't feel any pressure here, just
all right,
whatever comes.
you might have to remind me about the second part of it because I was still focusing on the first part of the question about spring. And what was coming to me about spring is how, to me, spring feels like this gentle unfolding. You look outside every day and there's a new change, and the next day there's this change, and the changes are happening all the time, and it's not, it doesn't feel like it's overnight to me. It's, oh, there's just, the buds are a little more open and this flower is now blooming and the birds are back, and then the next week you hear the frogs start to sing. So there's this gentle unfolding in these layers, and I think that can be a metaphor for a couple of things. So in order to create new habits, we have to let go of the old ones. So there's this layering of letting go, right? A metaphor that's commonly used in the yoga world is like the peeling back of an onion. So there's the undoing part of it, right? Where you're giving yourself permission to let go, maybe, and not all at once. Maybe you can just let go 10% or 5%, and then let go a little bit more the next day. And so while you're letting go of these old habits, then you're also in the process of creating new ones, right? And again, that doesn't have to be overnight. So just to give a more concrete example of what I mean, I think I used this one maybe the last time we met too, is just in my own restorative practice. I didn't just all of a sudden decide, oh, I'm going to plop myself down on the mat and do 20 minutes of relaxation. No, I had to let that be a gentle growing of that practice. I found the ideal time for me to practice was at the end of the day when I was wrapping up all the duties I have here, managing a home, managing my business. And putting on my mom hat when my children would get off the bus and come in the house. And so I found that transition, like between cycles, between seasons of the day, so to speak, as a really beautiful place to practice because it put me in a very calm, nurturing mindset towards my children for the rest of the day instead of, oh, I'm frazzled and rushed and crabby mom. So I began with just setting my timer for 5 minutes. And sometimes that was hard to just be there for 5 minutes resting.
Mm.
And as my body began to build that muscle memory of how good that felt, then I could increase my time. Because the habit cycle is basically made of three things. We have a cue, and it can be time of day, it can be sound happens, and then we have behavior that we participate in. And then the third piece of that is we have some kind of reward. So I always like to use the example of me and chocolate because I love chocolate. Right about midday, oftentimes now, it's 2:30 where I am. Anywhere between 1 and 3, I will feel a dip in my energy. And that was my cue. And so I love dark chocolate, so I'd reach for my chocolate. I would do it mindlessly. And my reward was, oh, get a little good feeling, a little boost of energy. So when I finally learned about the habit cycle, I decided to try an experiment with my restorative yoga. So when my energy dips, I notice that. And instead of reaching for chocolate, I get on my mat and I practice. And then what I was finding is, okay, the reward is the same, just a different behavior on my part. So my reward is I have energy again and I feel good. And so once my body recognized that reward and that I could get that reward through a different act, a different behavior, then it became easier and easier for me to set my timer for longer and longer periods of time. And now, once a week, and I practice restorative yoga daily during the work week. And one day a week, I aim to not set my timer at all and just let my body be the guide. And those are actually my favorite days to practice.
Wow, I love what you said. I think that was so beautifully said and stated, Goddess wisdom. I let my body be the guide.
Yeah.
And my body really resonates with that and loves that because I think that again in our kind of conditioning in our modern society and to push force to produce on and on, and yet out of that equation or out of that conditioning that's so deeply seated within all of us is time for our body. And we don't, I think, realize that our body plays so many important roles. Housing our spirit is a gift from Mother Earth to have this body and a blessing to have this body. And that actually we need, hopefully, can come to a point where we can begin to partner with our body. Partnering meaning many things, listening to the voice of the body, listening to what she really needs, which includes rest, time for rest. And so important to not, like you said in your story, you were burned out at age 28, basically. And how many of us as women or men have stories like that? I know I have a story at 45. I was burned out, had to go on depression medication for a short period. What was the answer to get off of it? Yoga. For me, it was yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong. I know this works. I know that the work that you're offering in the world, and you can just see it in you. You're just radiating with energy, radiating with light, radiating with love, and you're not burned out anymore. And you took back through simple practices, not anything overcomplicated or analytical, but just really getting in tune with your body back into a beautiful partnership is the way. And maybe you can describe it differently or how it is for you, but that our body is here to support us, to love us, to manifest a beautiful life, but we can't do it from pushing, forcing, and being out of balance, right? And all the things. Before we go on, I just wanted to invite our live audience. If you have any questions for Cindi, feel free to type those in the chat box or maybe jot those down, and we'll take your questions here in a minute. Cindi, would you like to do your card pull now, or would you like to talk about your special offers, or where do you feel you want to go next?
Yeah, I really resonate with what you said about where our spirits in partnership with our body. And I think that's a perfect segue into our card pull. When it's occurring to me that, rest is can be like this way of life. And restorative yoga isn't the only way to rest. There are many different ways that we can rest.
Mhm.
And it's this, it I'm what I'm trying to articulate is through my example of the habit change, right? Parenting became more restful. We can have a way of living that's restful, of working that's restful, right? And I think when our spirit and our body are working in partnership and we're the conduit to that, we have to be able to listen to our body's messages. So I think when that's happening, we're resting ourselves physically, mentally, emotionally. That opens that doorway to our intuitive channels, to our imagination, to our creativity. So I was feeling into what kind of practice I wanted to bring today. And I had remembered on the form that I filled out that you invited a card reading. And I was like, oh, yeah, I'm feeling into that. That feels really nice right now because in my inspired menopause circle right now, we're winding down the 3-month program. And we're really at that place where we're in the module called Free Spirit. And we've been using all of these restorative practices and building to the point where we open to our intuition and our imagination. And so one of the things that we do at the end of our time together is we draw from Colette Baron Reed's Animal Spirit Oracle. And the reason we do that is because we're recognizing perimenopause and menopause as a natural process, that for most women, it's a natural process. And this is a different story. I feel like it's been over medicalized and at the same time, not even researched, or medical professionals don't have training in menopause yet. There's this tension there. So that's a whole other story. And we really honor the process, honor ourselves as natural beings, part of the natural world. And so, in our celebratory circle, at the end of our time together, we do oracle card draws. Each woman then has an animal spirit that is there to guide her for the rest of that year in her perimenopause journey, because we do this circle every year and women come back again and again. I have this process I go through when I'm about to pull a card, and it's such an interesting way that this card came about today. So this process I have is to shuffle my cards and clear them, cut the deck. So the way I did it today is I just gave them a little tap, and then I went to cut them, and then I was going to shuffle them after I separated them. I cut them and I looked at the card in my left hand, and it was the bear, the brown bear spirit. And
Mhm.
I did not go any further than that because I knew this was the card immediately. And the reason is because the bear has come to me 3 times now in the last 4 days. So I traveled, and from where I am now to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan to go to a family funeral and also to bring my son back to his apartment with his stuff that he's clearing out of our house because we are moving. We're selling our home and moving. My husband is retiring. And on the way there and back, and this is rare, I saw a bear. We saw, sadly, a dead bear on the side of the road on the way out.
Mm,
And I knew I had intuitive hit that I was going to see a bear. What I didn't really know is I was going to see two bears. And I saw one
mm,
on my way home too. I was traveling by myself and I was in a more rural area. And here's this bear on the side of the road. I was amazed and overjoyed and just in awe. And then this card came up today. And the words on here say, take time out.
mm,
And there are three things that came to me immediately about the bear. And probably everybody here and listening, obvious one is they hibernate, right? And so I made a bunch of notes. I was journaling about this when I picked the card, and I was holding space for who is going to be here and who listening to this and what they need to know about their journey right now. And so the hibernation period is a season for rest, right? And conserving their energy. So when is it time for you to rest is the question that came through to me. Bears are also very protective of their young. They're great mothers. So the question in that is,
mm,
how can you mother yourself during the pause, right? There's the word pause right in perimenopause, right in menopause. How can you protect yourself during this time? And then finally, bears are omnivores, right? They consume everything and anything. That says to me that at this stage of life, we need to look to more than just one source for support. We have a plethora of resources and support available to us. So, like the bear, how can you use all of your resources and support now for nourishment?
mm,
And then finally, hibernation time is a
mhm,
time for dreaming and of meditating of what's possible for you. So, in the second half of life, right?
mhm.
And understanding what you truly want will help you to discern how to use your energy, when to act, and when to rest. And like the bear, trust in the cycles and the seasons and their purpose in your life.
Beautiful. Wow. That is so wonderful. There are so many beautiful messages in that, and how divine is that you did see two bears, and the universe is always reflecting back, right? And through nature and through animal spirits. I totally love animal spirits and nature. That is so beautiful. Several beautiful messages there, how to mother yourself, how to nourish yourself, how to, you have resources, you have support all around us. We can pause in the moment to rest. We can take a breather, breathe deeply, pause, and we can even go into hibernation when we need to do that. It's so beautiful, Cindy, these messages. And I so just resonate with this. And I think we all have our ways of knowing when we need to go into a deep rest. It's like that internal voice coming up inside of us that calls us to a restful period or into a hibernation. I know for myself that when I really need to go get a really deep rest, my place is to go to the beach, and to go to the beach for 4 or 5 days. And I can completely reset my body by going into the ocean, going into the salt water, because we're made of the salt, we're made of the earth, and it just completely resets me mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. I've just go into such deep rest, and that what's what works for me. But there's many different things that we can do if we can't get to the beach. Yoga, like you're talking about, journaling, meditating, resetting our nervous systems. Like you gave beautiful examples. I love what you said about, instead of going for chocolate, you created a new habit of even starting with 5 minutes, 5 minutes, and building on that 5 minute period to just allow your body to be on a mat and just to let your body be. That is so powerful. So, why don't we take a minute here for you to share with us about you have two beautiful radiant offers, both totally free today, I believe, for our community. And can you give us more information about those? And also, for anyone who'd like to sign up for these offers, the links are in the chat box as well.
Yeah, so I love the example you gave of another way to rest. And there are so many different ways to rest. And I want to mention an event that's happening later this year. It's called the
Mhm.
Rest Revolution. It's coming up in fall, in September. I created it with one of my good friends and business colleagues, Leslie Ellis. And we have 13 women who are participating in this summit, and each one is bringing a different way to rest, a different message of rest. And so anyone who keeps in touch with me, you'll be able to find out more about that summit. And I know it's a ways off, but there's just the whole intention is about how do we infuse rest into our lives? How do we make it a way of living? And the revolution is about standing up for rest, right? Against this culture that believes in the grind and the pushing and the pleasing and the perfecting. So thank you for giving me a little space to mention that. And then, yes, my offering is, and there's rest and then there's sleep. And one of the things I think that women struggle the most with in midlife, well, at least 40% of the population that's over 40 has some kind of sleep disturbance. And that can be exacerbated during perimenopause and menopause. So it can be prolonged if you don't have support around it. And I've struggled myself with sleep issues over the course of my years. Early on, I mentioned when I was in my 20s, I had a variety of different problems with sleep. And then all of that resurfaced in perimenopause. The difference being that in perimenopause, I had tools by then.
Mhm.
So I do a webinar once or twice a year. It's called the Sleep Well Solution, 5 steps to sweet sound slumber every night during perimenopause and menopause. And that's coming up on June 6th. So I can put the link in the chat unless you have it handy, Laura. It's a free webinar. I would love to have you join me and learn about what's keeping you up at night. What are the steps that you can take to
Mhm.
put into your sleep well solution? What's my number one go-to sleep well solution? And what can you do when you've tried everything? You've put all your oars in the water, as my acupuncturist likes to say, and you still don't get sleep. So I have a solution for that too. So that's coming up in June. And then for women in perimenopause, there's last time when we talked, I mentioned that there are 36 different changes, challenges. The medical community likes to call them symptoms, even though perimenopause is not a medical condition. Since then, I have learned that it's almost double that. On the one hand, it's oh darn, there's more things that we need to consider as being part of this change. And on the other hand, that means people are paying attention, awareness is growing, and so they're connecting more of these. Oh, yeah, you have burning mouth sensation that could be connected to perimenopause. So there, I like that this awareness is increasing, but it's not just sleep problems. So during the month of June, I'm opening up my calendar for any midlife woman who wants to talk to me about what she's experiencing during perimenopause, what kind of menopause support she would like. And we'll sit down for an hour. I'll listen to you deeply. I'll ask you questions and give you a chance to share your vision with me about what that looks like to have a restful night's sleep, to have a calm and easeful journey through perimenopause, and just for your best health going into your second act. And then what are the challenges in that? What's keeping you from getting there? And I like to offer my best recommendations, whether that's continuing to work with me or if it's another resource. it's all in service to helping you find what's going to support you the most during perimenopause. So I have about 8 spaces open in June, and I would love to talk to you and help you with that.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Cindy. Those are beautiful offerings, and both of the links are in the chat box. So there's a link to sign up for Cindy's The Sleep Well Solution on June 6th. So make a note of that on your calendar, and you can see the link there. Or if you want to get the very generous of you, Cindy, to offer an hour deep dive discovery session. That is very generous. The link is in there to sign up on Cindy's calendar, and you might want to just grab up one of those 8 spaces because I'm sure you're going to fill those, Cindy, very quickly here. I don't think we have any questions from the audience right now. Cindy, what else would you like to share with us today in closing our time together? Anything that's coming up for you in the moment? We touched on so many different beautiful points today, and I'm just going back through my notes to see of one thing I love that you talked about, something about layering of letting go, layers of letting go. And does that bring up anything for you, any other wisdom that you could share with us in, or just any other wisdom at all that's coming through that can help us to even recognize, maybe even recognizing and having awareness around what maybe not symptoms. You mentioned the medical industry, I think 36 symptoms, but now we are discovering more, and those aren't actually symptoms. But would you describe those as imbalances in the body, or would you describe those as maybe red flags from the body, or the body's trying to get our attention in some way? Or I'd love to learn a little bit more if you have more for us in our closing today.
Yeah, I like some of those terms. Red flags. What was the other one you used?
Like not conditions, instead of symptoms, like imbalances,
Imbalances. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that. We just drew a card, right?
Hmm.
And the body is like this incredible messenger or an antennae, right? And in order to be open to receive those messages from spirit, to notice that bear showing up over and over as, oh, this is a message from spirit, we need to be in balance. We need to be rested. We need to be in harmony to receive those messages. And I like to say that the magic's in the practice is one of my favorite things to say, because I think we're also conditioned to think that there's going to be a magic pill or one thing that's going to fix our problems. And I think it's about showing up on a regular basis for yourself. And that's what practice is. You show up. And I think we don't see, sometimes we have those moments that are magical. We can see the magic right in the moment, like when I saw that bear. And other times I think it's this more kind of gentle unfolding again of, we don't see the magic until we look back. I think as humans, we're always we're always measuring our progress against the future, against what's out there. And that's like always a receding, the horizon's always receding, right? And when we look back, we can see where we came from and where we are now. And that's why I love the magics in the practice, because it takes that journey of practicing and then being able to look back and go, oh, wow, I was burned out, passed out on a grocery store floor, completely unaware of myself, and probably unhappy and not very healthy and always exhausted. And then I can look at my life now and even my journey through perimenopause. It was hard. It was really hard. I wasn't one of those women who could say, oh, I just breezed through that. That, by the way, is only about a quarter of the population. 75% of us are going to deal with some kind of either hot flashes or lack of libido, sleepless nights, foggy thinking, emotional mood swings where you want to cry or rage at the drop of a hat, right?
Hmm.
They're just some of the examples. Most of us, 3/4 of us, are going to have these changes showing up in our body. And maybe it's just our body's message saying, slow down and listen and practice. And I really feel that's where the magic is, in the practice.
Beautiful. And I love what you said, such wisdom around whether you choose this particular way of recognizing the imbalances in your life and that your body may need more rest, or whether it's something else. Show up for yourself. If you don't show up for yourself, no one else can do that but you. It's so true. That is such a powerful statement, Cindi. My body loves it. My body is just filled with chills because the body holds the wisdom. The body holds the truth. The body never lies. And I love that about what you're doing too, because you're helping us to show up for ourselves, and you're including the mental, the emotional, the physical, the spiritual. You're including all aspects of who we are on every layer. And that's really walking in a beautiful place of wholeness, of not leaving any part out because we can't. This is the makeup of our beingness, of our spirit, of our soul, of our physical body. And doing that with neutrality, which I also love, doing that with neutrality is moving beyond the polarity state. It's moving into the field of you're already complete, you're already whole, you're already beautiful, you're already all of these qualities. And I just love that message, Cindi, so much. Yeah, I think, is there any other closing words you have for us today? You've given us so much juicy wisdom and two beautiful, or almost three beautiful offerings today, all free to support women on this journey that we all go through, perimenopause and menopause. And you've given us such a beautiful awareness, Cindy, today around how important it is to give ourselves, it's not a privilege, it's our birthright to give ourselves rest, to give ourselves permission, to give ourselves rest, to give ourselves the gift of showing up for ourselves. And that's such a powerful and beautiful message that I think all of us can take away from today's conversation. Is there anything else you want to share with us in closing that you can think of?
Yeah, one more thing is coming to mind. I love everything you just said. And just to circle back around to this idea of spring, and we think of spring as this season of abundance, right? And whenever we rest, we're receiving, right? And so we live in this kind of culture and time where we've been taught that we're not enough, we're never doing enough, there's never enough time, there's never enough resources. And these are insidious beliefs that have worked their way into our minds and our way of living by the time we're midlife. And so, whether you're resting, whether it's through restorative yoga, or you're going to the beach and you're lying there with your book, or you're listening to the seagulls and the waves, right? You're resting. And when you're resting, you're receiving. And it's through that practice of receiving and filling back up, filling our spirit, our soul, that then we begin to remember our divinity and our true abundance, the abundance that's all around us all the time. And that's a really beautiful thing.
I totally agree with you. And what a beautiful statement to close our time together with, in that we are abundant beings and we have abundance all around us, and that connection to remembering, and not just remembering, but awakening into the flow of abundance again, is our divinity that we all have from source, that we're all connected to source. We're all of source. We're all have a divine spark of light that lives within this beautiful body. And what a beautiful way to close this, Cindi. So I want to thank you so much, Cindi, for just your beautiful blessings that you've brought to us today. You've brought us such powerful goddess wisdom. You've brought us such a beautiful example of how you showed up for yourself in your own life and you were able to overcome. You were able to find resilience. You were able to resolve and bring forth beautiful solutions to bring your own life from burnout back into balance, back into abundance, back into wholeness, back into creating such a beautiful life example for us as a goddess, as a priestess, I like to say. So thank you so much for giving us your love, your time, your attention, your support today, and being with us. And I also want to thank all of our listeners who are here with us live today. Thank you also for being here. And I want to thank you for that from my heart to yours. And let me just again refer to the chat box. And Suzanne said, thank you both very much. Dear greetings. Thank you, Suzanne, so much for being here. Thank you for that as well. We do appreciate that. And yeah, so I will be getting out the replay. I don't know if it will be this afternoon or no later than Monday. So if you didn't have a chance to be with us live, the replay, or you want to listen to the replay again, because there were so many juicy golden nuggets in here that Cindi brought to us. And I'll get that out in the email on the online community and uploaded on social media with the links to sign up for Cindi's offering. So again, thank you so much, Cindi, for being here today. Sending you much love and blessings, sending love and blessings to everyone here in the Get Your Goddess Groove On community. And from my heart to yours, namaste. Until next time, be well, live well, and please show up for you. Thank you so much. Much love. Bye bye for now.